Thank you, Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Peters and Ranking Member Nelson, for this opportunity to speak about climate change. I'm John Christie, Professor of Atmospheric Science at the University of Alabama in Huntsville and Alabama State climatologist. I've served in many climate science capacities, including lead authorship of United Nations IPCC. I, along with Dr. Curry, have the distinction of being 2 of the 7 scientists targeted by Representative Grijalva for investigation because our views about climate change differ from those of the administration. My research might best be described as building data sets from scratch for 50 years to help us understand what the climate is doing and what it might do and why it does what it does. The 2 main points of my verbal testimony are simple. First, the basis on which the popular view that human-caused climate change is dangerous does not pass simple validation tests. Secondly, the attempt to study climate change with an objective eye is thwarted by the federal funding process. Now, we at UAH monitor climate change for such variables as temperature. However, no one has a direct means to tell us why the temperature changes. Our thermometers only tell us what has happened. They do not tell us why it happened. There is really no way to prove why climate does what it does. No, so to try to understand why the changes occur, we make claims or hypotheses using climate models whose equations attempt to approximate all the important factors that affect the climate. If these equations are accurate, we can then see how each factor, such as greenhouse gases or volcanoes, might affect the climate, and therefore we could learn what the cause of these changes might be. Now, one variable, according to climate models, that has the largest response to extra greenhouse gases is the temperature of the bulk atmosphere, and this is the layer from the surface to about 50,000 feet in altitude. As shown in my written testimony, and as you can see on the chart to my left, the models fail this very simplest of validation tests. They can't even reproduce what has already happened in the past 37 years. 102 climate model runs warm up the bulk layer of the atmosphere by an average factor of 3 more than what has actually occurred. Now, being off by a factor of 3 does not qualify as settled science, in my view. Going along with your hearing, you might want to say dogma is the red line, data is the blue and the green.
I think that is very well said. I would note this chart on the right, which shows for the last 18 years that there's been no significant warming whatsoever. Now that's directly contrary to what the data set showed. Now, Dr. Titley, I noticed in your written testimony that you took a moment to address what you described as the so-called pause in global temperatures. By the pause, are you referring to the last 18 years of no significant recorded warming?
Well, unlike your previous witness, I am not referring to the 1940s. It is, I thought you'd like that.
Indeed.
Yes. The pause is very interesting. As you know, sir, 1998, big El Nino. So it's kind of interesting we started 18 years. We don't look at a 15-year data set or a 10-year data set or a 20-year data set. We look at an 18-year data set. But even if you do that, that's fine. Let's look at that. We have... This is low budget here. I got to do my own charts. Thanks, Amanda.
Well, let me take a moment on...
So here's, sir, just to answer your question, Senator, here was 1998, and here's today. So on me, I mean, I'm just a simple sailor, but it's hard for me to see the pause on that chart. So I think the pause is kind of come and gone.
Do you dispute the satellite measurement?
Let's not talk about the satellite. Here's
but okay, sir, I'm asking, do you dispute? I understand that the global warming alarmists don't want to talk about the satellite data, but I'm asking.
Satellite. Let's talk about the satellite measurements. Let's talk about orbital decay. Let's talk about overlapping satellite records. Let's talk about stratospheric temperature contamination.
These next 2 charts are from the United States Historical Climate Network. These are the measurements of the thermometers that are measuring climate change, and these in particular record the adjustments that NOAA has done to the climate data. Chart on the left, you can see that between 1900 and 1960, NOAA made relatively few adjustments, and they were relatively minor. And then we see that for the more recent years, they've been adjusting them upwards. And the adjustments consistently are upwards. They're never adjusting downward. Now, the chart on the right likewise looks at the raw numbers are on the top. The raw numbers demonstrate a fair degree of uniformity. But the adjusted numbers, the old temperatures are cooler and the new temperatures are warmer.
Well, there's a number of different groups who do global temperature data sets. And they have different methods for dealing with spatial representativeness, missing data, changes in temperature, measuring instrumentation, adjusting for the time of day, all sorts of different adjustments that they make. And the adjustments, as you can see, are rather huge. Okay, so should we, to me, the error bars should really be much bigger if they're making such a large adjustment. So we really don't know too much about what's going on in terms of, it's a great deal of uncertainty. Yes, I do believe that we've overall been warming, but we've been warming for 200, maybe even 400 years. Okay, and that's not caused by humans. Okay, there's natural variability involved. And this is exactly what has not been sorted out. Now, the ocean temperature is the current focus of controversy. I mean, the land data sets are sort of starting to agree, but there's a great deal of controversy and uncertainty right now in the treatment of the ocean temperatures. And that has not been sorted out. And so especially looking, in the recent period, if we're trying to sort out what's going on with the hiatus or the pause, we need to look at the satellite data. I mean, this is the best data that we have, and it's global. And we need to sort out the differences between the satellite and the surface observations. And then there's the numerical weather prediction, reanalysis, data assimilation systems that give us a global view. And we haven't been really using that for climate purposes, and I think we need to. So the work is just starting in terms of trying to sort this out.
Now,
and
Dr.
we don't
Curry, you said something very important there, and that you said the satellite data are the best data we have. Can you explain as a scientist why that's the case?
Well, it's global coverage. It's not a simple measurement. You have to do, a retrieval and weighting functions, and it's a complex problem, but it's reasonably well calibrated and consistent over the last 30-ish years.
And not a single Democratic senator had any response to the satellite data that demonstrates their entire theory of global warming for 18 years hasn't been happening.
Yeah, I mean, we need to sort this out rather than ignore it. I mean, this is what I'm concerned about.
And Mr. Stein, you look like you want to make a comment.
Yeah,
I want to ask a question on this because you also are quite familiar with the cooking of the books of the hockey stick, and indeed, Dr. Curry, you mentioned ClimateGate and the scientists receiving a whole lot of funding to conclude global warming was occurring and then adjusting their results to reflect that. I would note if you systematically adjust the numbers upwards for more recent temperatures, wouldn't that by definition produce a data set that proves your global warming theory is correct? And the more you add, the more warming you can find.